We then have the relational hypothesis, sometimes known as a correlative hypothesis or associative hypothesis. So, a relational hypothesis looks at the degree of overlap between variables. So instead of looking for a causal link and comparing it against a control group, the relational hypothesis simply looks for correlative qualities. And the more the variables seem to overlap, the stronger the relationship is said to be. The variables are interdependent, that is, manipulating or seeing a change in one affects the other, and vice versa. The closer the associated link, the better the hypothesis. Consider things like the amount of funding a hospital gets versus the wait times or mortality rates, religious upbringing and being in strongly religious areas versus having a good education, and so on. Of course, correlation is not causation. So whilst it can be indicative of a link, sometimes you end up with the sort of thing like the number of people who drown from falling into a pool correlating with the number of films Nicolas Cage has been in. Yeah. And whilst amusing, and this site is hilarious with the correlations it's found, it shows that the correlative hypothesis can be misapplied, and correlation is not causation. So even though this correlation does seem ridiculous, we could technically test it by not letting Nick Cage be in any new roles for a number of years, right? And actually see that if we didn't let him appear on the screen for 3 years, would these rates suddenly drop and become pretty much nothing? Chances are we'd find out that actually no. It's a correlation of complete coincidence rather than being a correlation that is completely valid. Now, I know it would be hard to actually prevent Nicolas Cage from appearing in any film, but he could technically spend the time recording a load of films, and then after that, say, 3-year period, then released at least double the number of films he would usually be in. So where it's got there, we've got our max number of films at 4. Imagine if it was 8 films a year, and then just see if the correlation then goes back up. So we've got our test of taking the films away and doubling them as well to see if this correlation still continues. Now, whilst this wouldn't necessarily actually count as fully falsifying the correlative hypothesis, the weaker you make that graph, the less you see that interaction between the variables, the closer you come to saying no, that this correlation is pure coincidence. It's not actually a good correlation. We've weakened the relationship. So enough examples of this weakness and this correlation not happening is enough to potentially reject said correlative hypothesis. Obviously, getting Nick to agree to that would be a whole different ballgame. But if he would be up for it, it'd be actually really cool. He could even do a film about his not appearing in films and seeing if people still died. I wonder if it's in any way to do with that whole dream sequence one, where he keeps on appearing in people's dreams, and they start off where he's not doing anything, then they start becoming positive, and then they become really scary. Probably not though.